There's a lot of questions I have about relationships that I want to ask. I don't think I've answered them, but I just want to pose these questions about why people should stay together. Hi, I'm Caroline Clark. I'm a software developer by trade, in a variety of roles, but I am finally chasing my dream of making a game, working on my first game called This Is Reality. This Is Reality came out of a game jam, Castle Jam in 2018, where the theme was capricious, so this idea of changeable emotions. During that, we made a demo of going through a breakup where it starts very happy and then goes into the emotions of going through that breakup. And since it's evolved into a game about relationships with questions that we want to ask about when should you stay in a relationship, when should you leave, and trying to tell that story with game mechanics in a way that I feel is quite unique. So that was quite a hard trailer to make. The game is still very early in development. And the game process has been a lot of experimentation, but there's a lot of ideas there that we wanted to communicate. So the different settings, these kind of abstract levels that act as the shape of the conversation that they're having, they're going to be quite a central point in the game. Because I think dialogue in games, you see like people kind of dead-eyed talking to each other with lots of words. And so I don't know, like that was something I really hoped to communicate and to show like the different moods of the game, the points where they're happy shopping together and the kind of more conflict-based levels. So that was the trailer. Now let's look at the gameplay. There are two people in their mid-20s who in their first established relationship, and they're trying to get by. We have this concept about relationships that you fall in love and then everything's fine. And I think there's a lot, like there's devil in the detail of like these small things, these small niggles just get in the way. So here he is trying to get into the apartment that he shares with his partner. But obviously she's not there and she has the only key. So he has to then try and find her, and she tells him that she's in the park. The idea of this is to establish the environment that they're based in. So it's been a bit of a mix of things, but this for example, is the landscape pretty much from the original Game Jam demo. And he finds her. Here we want to establish that they're in a committed relationship, so that they've not just met, that this is a game about being in an established relationship and getting the character to walk around and understand the area they're based in. So there's some references to Bethnal Green in this area. That's a clear reference to the supermarket we all know. And that dialogue is to explain that they need to cooperate to get into the flat. So we're trying to establish the beginning of some cooperation puzzles where they have to work together. There's some different tones in this demo. So obviously there's some very high emotional peaks, but this one is kind of a lower one where just tutorializing and explaining this flow between the real world and these abstract kind of conversation levels, and explaining some of the cooperation mechanics that they share. So this idea of being able to pick her up and throw her to reach areas that she couldn't otherwise reach. And then visualizing a decision, like which takeout to get in this case, there aren't really any consequences to this decision. It's just to start to get the character used to this flow that we're trying to establish. So the blocks that are orange are representing his kind of thought process or the things that he's saying to match his clothing, while hers are blue and purple. and the sofa acts as kind of a transport point so that we can see that these worlds blend together. And then so we're establishing this day loop. So the idea that they get ready in the mornings to go to work, and they come home from work. So this is going to be fleshed out a lot more. This is still very thin. We want to establish more of a routine. There's a lot of conflict, like lots of things that happen in the morning in relationships, like one person hogs the bathroom or gets up late. And I think there's a lot of scope there to see how discussions, the mood from the previous day can bleed into the next. So that's quite interesting. This is just their commute to work together. There was a lot of bass, like the station near my house. This station is largely modelled off that. This bit will probably change in the future. So they get off at the same stop together, but in the future, we'd like one of them to be further away, one of them to live much further from home, to explain again why one of them may come home later, or to show the different points of view in their day-to-day and how that can cause misunderstandings between them. So that's an example when they're going into the flat. That's an example of how they have to cooperate, and you can start to switch characters when they're on good terms. You can switch perspective and cooperate together like that. And the idea is that gets harder if they're not cooperating, or if they're annoyed at each other. So in the idea is that he's just talking a lot about his day, to communicate this idea that maybe he over talks at times, and then they have to cooperate in this like stupid supermarket that's a bit badly laid out. So this is something that's going to be extended upon these puzzles right now. They're very, very simple, but we want to expand on this kind of, for example, the throwing mechanic, or them cooperating in order to reach areas. We want to repeat that in this section so that we start to ingrain these mechanics and how they can work together. So this idea came out of the fact that, this is a very personal story, to be honest. I get very annoyed if I'm not asked how my day is. It sounds very pathetic to say it that way, but it's I don't know, that experience of someone who just doesn't seem to take an interest in how your day was, especially if you have some news that you really want to share. And so that was why I tried to create this level of this feeling of I want to reveal something, but I don't want to if they don't care. And then it escalates into this stupid fight where I'm not revealing the information and I'm sulking essentially. And so I wanted to try and capture that, because everyone knows that then you're hiding something, and you're kind of just orbiting around this thing which you're trying to get to the point of. This will be elaborated a bit more, but I wanted a part 2 to this. I think this idea of hiding something and orbiting around it, there's several different ways that can end. Either your partner can take an interest in what that is and get to the root cause, or they can mentally shut out and just give up at this point and say, nah, I don't have the bandwidth to do that, which is perfectly reasonable. But that leaves you then in a very difficult position of feeling extra isolated or extra, like they don't care about you, and so that can lead to a really nasty evening. There's a lot of questions I have about relationships that I want to ask. I don't think I've answered them, but I just want to pose these questions about why people should stay together. So this is extending upon the idea of the I talked about how they have to cooperate to go to the flat, and this is an example of when that cooperation breaks down because he's late home and she's not very happy. So at this point, the player can't control her. The player has to wait for the girl character to kind of finish what she's doing, whether that be to answer the door. And she's very slow, so it's slightly tedious to have to wait up for her to finish. And also, it's supposed to be a confusing, like you basically had this mechanic taken away from you is the idea, like this switching mechanic. We want more of a build up to that so that when that mechanic's taken away, it feels a lot more surprising. So I spent a lot of time generating ideas that I haven't seen before. And the risk with that is that the reason a lot of these aren't done before is because they don't work. And you don't know that until you've created it. And it's trying to find ways to prototype things quickly to see if they work. And then this bit's quite similar to the original Game Jam demo. So this was where the whole game kind of originated, was from this point. This is Reality is still early in development. We've putting up a demo on itch. And the final game we aim to be about an evening long, like 2-3 hours, available console, PC. Hopefully next year, although that depends on funding. And yeah, if you want to keep in touch with us, we are at scribblescape.com or scribblescape on Twitter. So feel free to join the mailing list. And yes, thank you for London Games Festival for giving us the opportunity to showcase here.